Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On Podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash. Welcome to another exciting podcast interview. I have Atul Patel. He's the co-founder and CEO of Orbee. And today we're going to learn a little bit more about where their company sits in the data ecosystem in automotive retail. What is middleware and why is Atul working so hard to break through with data integrations, interoperability? What does this mean to dealers and their future profitability and retention? Atul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
So Atul, let's say that probably at NADA this year, one of the buzz topics was CDPs and first-party data management. You've been talking about this for a while, and yet, man, there's a lot of progress that was made. A lot more progress needs to be made in the fact that there are very few documented, powerful use cases where dealers are kind of ringing the bell saying, man, everyone really should lean in to first-party data management, to identity resolution, to more personalized communication. So at a high level, what inning are we in? Are we in the first inning, the second inning, in getting dealers to truly protect, clean, and activate their data?
And that's a great question. I'd say that we're in different innings for different games. Okay.
Ooh,
so
come on.
Yeah, when it comes to the what we're seeing is larger groups, much to sort of your sort of hard work and encouraging people to start thinking about this and kind of the overall trend. But we're seeing larger groups bring on staff and other people who are kind of dedicated to this idea of transforming their business, right? And you're absolutely right about the use cases. It's usually driven by a use case. They're not coming in saying, I need a new database, right? They're saying, I want to launch a concierge department that speaks to all of my rooftops' best customers and provides an experience with our group brand in mind, right? Other use cases are like, hey, look, I'm trying to better spend my marketing dollars in simple advertising, right?
Sure.
And so the use cases are what drives the bigger groups, especially. And then when you think about the mid and long tail, and you start to sort of think, they don't really, we're in the early innings there. So at the group level, probably second inning, third inning, right? There's some clarity as to what needs to happen. And then on that sort of middle and long tail, I think we're in the early innings because what needs to happen is we need to actually compile these things in an easier, digestible way for them, right? Because you know me, Brian, like I get hit with that problem all the time. It's like, oh, you got to simplify it. I kind of get what you're talking about, but how does that impact my business? And that's where we're the first inning. So we're going to be spending a lot of effort in kind of integrating with the ecosystem and bringing those mid and long tail dealers. When I say long tail, I mean smaller rooftops, easier solutions that plug into what they're doing today without requiring them to rethink everything.
You know, when you use the baseball analogy, I think the smaller dealers, individual stores or one or two stores, they're not in the first inning because they're trying to assemble the team. They're trying to figure out, hey, is my marketing manager capable of understanding data? Do I have the right data extraction or integration partners, right? You know, they're trying to assemble the team. And is this tool just a grab for my marketing dollars? Or is this a platform that's really going to help transform all areas of my business? So let's dig in. We've been using two terms, customer data platform and a marketing automation platform. For dealers watching today, marketing automation platforms, let's just say that first hit automotive, you might think of Haystack, where they were like one of the first to say, I'm going to take your inventory, I'm going to take dynamic ads, and then you had lot links, right? People who were saying, I'm going to take shopper data and see demand and vehicles. And as the world has evolved, we've been seeing more marketing platforms that feed in data to automate targeting, creative, right? Bringing in photo feeds or instant background changers, marketing automation platforms, and then customer data platforms. This concept of bringing in your data from the DMS and the CRM and maybe phone call data and maybe website data and try to create a summary of where that customer is today, where they live, what's their best phone number, what's their best email, MAP, CDP. Where does Orbee's platform fit in that ecosystem? And how do you use the word middleware to best describe what you're trying to accomplish?
All right. Well, great overview there. So first and foremost, where Orbee sits, right, we have sort of three core layers to our capability.
Okay.
And this sort of together serves as a kind of a middleware framework. At the core is we have database capabilities. Okay. When I say database capabilities, when you think about a CDP, you're thinking about ingesting data, right? Customer data, event data, activity data, log data, all of that stuff. And normally what you sort of see happen is the vendor that you might choose picks and chooses what data they feel needs to be stitched together.
That's
what
right.
we do at Orbee is we provide a database capability that can ingest the full data set, okay, from every source. I'm talking every table, every column, every schema, all of that. And this is where it kind of gets technical, right? But we are almost like a data lake in the way you would expect a Snowflake or a Databricks, or, those kinds of companies. They provide,
but for automotive, right? So you are the customized data lake to make it easy for dealers who are using Reynolds or CDK or eLead or VIN to bring in that data because you know what their data structures look like.
Exactly. Now, mind you, different vendors have had stages of their software and have different clients on different features. So you can't just do a wholesale integration that says this is for everybody. You actually almost have to understand versioning, customer
That's
deployment,
a really great point.
Right? Because the schemas aren't all the same. And we have large dealer groups who have had legacy versions of some of these tech platforms. And so they have different features, different fields, different mappings. And we not only ingest the data, Brian, we understand the logic to rebuild all of those layers of overrides and mappings in RN. And that's at the core of what we do. And that middleware there means to connect with all these data sources in an easier way, both to pull in the data and to push out the data. Okay. That's number one. The second is all the integrations that relate to the full experience. I'm talking, how do you do the plumbing? Is it SFTP? Is it APIs? Is it web events on the front end? Is it real time? Is it batch? And all those integrations are increasingly push and pull. So where Orbee is very different, right? When you think about the evolution you described about ad companies, marketing companies, it was more like, give me your data and I'll go do a bunch of stuff.
That's right. And there was no connection between what happened when they used the data. One of the things I want to talk about today, because you have expertise, is, you send a list out to a marketing company, they do an email. What happens to the records that bounce or that are marked as spam or suspicious? The dealer never gets that signal to even update their data. So every month they're wasted. Like, I got 10,000 people I'm emailing, but they may only be emailing 7,000.
Yes, absolutely. Now that's, what you described are a couple of them. There's also opt-out consent management that starts to get really complicated, because if you're using all these tools, each of those tools require the option for the consumer to opt out. Now, how do you tell the other tools to do the same? So the bi-directional nature of Orbee is, I think, important, and it's a true differentiator in terms of what I'm seeing in the market. So when data goes to a place and then they do all this magical stuff, I think that's cool. Like we do elements of that, but it's really being able to work with all these vendors in the other way, right? So that's where all these sort of podcasts and all these announcements you've been hearing with these integrations, most of the time it's bi-directional, right? Are we there yet in all of those use cases? Absolutely not. It's like a checklist of what we are capable of doing, right?
Right.
And so that's like the second layer. So we've covered data, we've covered integrations, and now the final layer is what we call sort of experiences. And when I say experiences, this is to orchestrate that that sort of experience with that end customer, the end car shopper,
Okay.
whether it's advertising, marketing, retention,
Messaging,
analytics, messaging, personalization, on-site, ad serving. That's where we provide some of our own native tools in the form of SDKs. We also provide middleware to a lot of the big outside of auto platforms, whether it's AWS or Twilio or whatnot. And then
or Trade Desk or something, right?
Yeah,
to push
absolutely.
out streaming video content or something.
Absolutely. And then finally, the experiences is kind of when you think about like all the vendors, you can't really go into the market these days and say, use me for everything. Like that's not our mentality. If we have pieces that they can use, that we've created a simple version, sort of a version that connects to a more commoditized stack, like a call tracking stack, then we'll help them do that. But if they're really committed to what they're using today, Orbee actually just sits in between that system and everything else. And we are excited. In fact, I spoke on stage, yesterday about how dealers are going to keep using those systems. Sure, over time, systems get sort of evolved out, if you will, but that's not just because of like, oh, hey, I'm going to now completely bulldoze everything I'm doing. It's because the industry is evolving, the customer is evolving, right? You're starting to see mobile apps come into the picture now at dealerships, right? Why is that? Because the walled gardens. So Orbee has a data platform, integration layer, and then experience layer with APIs, SDKs that work with to and from a lot of our partners.
So let's unpack a few use cases because it's really important. So customer can be a known customer in Orbee because they visited before, they've opened up an email, they've completed a form on the website. So now they have an Orbee digital ID. That digital ID tracks when they come back. So now they go in and they start to work on a trade evaluation, but when the form comes up, they don't complete it, or they start a service scheduler and they get halfway through and then they're asking questions. Do you want this package or this package? They're not comfortable with making pricing decisions. Since the customer is resolved in the Orbee database, and since you have a connectivity with, I think one of the recent announcements was Car Wars, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Then you can push a task into a CRM. Hey, call this customer. You could push this into a call campaign inside of Car Wars because you have bi-directional, or if that customer stops the service scheduler and calls, you're going to know that they booked a service appointment from Car Wars, right? So by having bi-directional, you could push a task in the CRM for someone to call. You can listen to Car Wars. Hey, did the person call? And if they didn't call, right, send them an offer, send them an email, or push them into a call campaign. Is that a pretty common use case? I'm going to call that the abandoned shopping cart for trade tools, abandoned shopping cart for DR, abandoned shopping cart for service. If there's bi-directional, we can trap more existing customers who fall through the cracks or don't like our process to improve retention and loyalty. Is that a reasonable in today's ecosystem?
It's a great use case. It's an important one, abandonments as a whole. And the important thing here to understand is it's not just about pounding them after they abandon. It's to understand, is that behavior mean something else, right? Does it mean that they're not sure? Does it of which of those things, and they should get a call and be treated very differently and not being pushed down the scheduler? Or hey, maybe they're just doing price shopping, and we should make sure we kind of inject a message that says, hey, we might have a special offer for you, right? Can you imagine the use case where you come back the second time. And I know, in fact, I'll use a real world example, Brian. All right. So I had changed my Amex credit card. I had called in, and once in a while, if I see a random charge, I'm like, I'm just going to reset and I just get a new card, right?
Okay.
It does force me to do a little bit of work because now you got to log into everywhere.
That's right.
But it's a good reminder of what you have. Okay. So LinkedIn sends me an alert saying, fix your credit card today and get 2 free months. They were willing to think, and they signaled in their mind, people change their credit card because they don't recognize a charge, and maybe LinkedIn was the charge they weren't recognizing.
Right.
By offering 2 free months, it's encouraging me to hurry up and fix it.
Right.
And so that's an example of a use case that could be really applied. But Brian, you cannot do that if then the DMS and the ROs don't know what this discount means. So that's why you can't just solve one problem anymore. You got it. Once you have an idea for one sort of sequence of ideas, now you got to fix all the other plumbing to interconnect with that. And that's kind of that sort of middleware vision that we have, is that every vendor, every partner of ours can do what they do well, but orchestrate with each other.
So let's go back a step to the business case why dealers should get off the mat and stop doing what they're currently doing. And here's how I've been describing it, that dealers need a third leg to their retail strategy. The DMS and the CRM has been pretty much the two core technologies dealers have used for customer engagement and transaction. I've made the case that the CDP, a customer-centric model, which the CRM and the DMS is not, is needed to reduce waste, to control the cadence of communication, to provide personalized experiences, and to deliver basically an experience that consumers are getting at other retailers.
Mm-hmm.
So some dealers are like, yeah, that sounds like a nice to have.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, for larger dealer groups, you and I are working on some of them. We're talking tens of millions of dollars of revenue changes.
Mm-hmm.
But for an average dealer, how do you describe to them the financial benefit? Look, every dealer I know wants to deliver a better customer experience. They know they have holes in their process. They know they have dirty data. But in order for them to spend money or to train their staff or to stop doing what they're doing, it has to almost be urgent. And no matter how much I've been writing about it and how many use cases, you and I have been on the road a lot. What are you telling dealers that might be getting them to stand up and raise their hand and say, I'm ready to start managing. I'm not going to allow it to happen anymore. Is there anything you could share? Because to tell you the truth, I'm like you. I'm just trying to get people to talk about it, work together, create a better customer experience, and let the best solutions rise to the top.
Yeah. Well, the way we're seeing the traction of educating sort of that mid-market that, don't have all of the tools and the people and the bandwidth to even get into this level of stuff is really being able to save money first, right? Because there are a lot of legacy ways of doing business. Sometimes we keep subscriptions that we probably shouldn't. And can you imagine dealers have used lots of tech companies, lots of platforms. So when we shift the thinking to you no longer, remember, there's a couple of layers. I almost want to describe a diagram here. There's third-party systems with third-party data. There's third-party systems with first-party data. And then there's first-party systems with first-party data, okay? By teaching dealers that many a times other companies took your data and then built a business around it, selling it back to you. Okay, meaning I'm going to ask you for your wallet, take your cash out and say, Brian, do you want to buy back this money? Okay, that's third party, first party. That's the second layer. And even prior to that, you had third party, meaning I don't need your data. You don't even have clean stuff. I'm just going to go create leads from my own effort. And finally, for the first time, dealers can use first party data, their own data,
Right.
and use first party technology. That's like Orbee, right? Where we work on behalf of the dealer. We don't build audiences that are spanning dealerships. We don't sell leads. We don't do any of that. When you use first party data with first party tech, all of a sudden, you don't need to spend that much money because you're not paying someone else to take your data and do more with it. You're doing. And when I say you, I want to be clear about something. Never in sort of all of sort of I guess business history, when we say you, it never has meant you. If I went to a big e-commerce company or an airport and I said, hey, you're going to use this, no, they're using something that IBM made it for them. So when we say you, we like to clarify to dealers that we don't mean you on your own with no tools. It's you plus the Orbee capability.
Got it.
But it's yours in a way. Orbee is an extension of the dealership stack. And that's, I think, an important component of the way we've been able to convince sort of smaller dealers to listen and consider this. And again, the thing that I think that has been missing is how do dealers start to bring things in-house to hire people and retain them and excite them? Because when you have an employee that gets to use technology that almost feels like they work at Nordstrom's using Adobe,
right,
it's all of a sudden cool. Like they're like, yeah, this is kind of interesting. This is going to help my career. I could stay here at this dealership.
I couldn't agree with you more, just because I know the people that are working on first-party data management projects in the dealer groups or in the CXO network. They're pretty darn excited. I could see the light going on. They're super pumped. One of the other things, it's a little bit of a political hot potato, but I don't mind throwing you tough questions. For one of the dealer groups that I'm working on, just to analyze some of the benefits of the CDP, was to document all the DMS integration fees that are being paid. And when dealers could have a unified customer data record, depending on the use cases, those data access fees can be reduced. For example, the average dealer, and let's just use Reynolds because I think Reynolds is probably the highest fee-based DMS access model. If your CRM like DriveCentric has to get data out of the DMS to, pencil a deal or change a deal structure, that could be $700-800 a month. Service lifecycle marketing, sending out email communications, people in service, that's another $700-800 a month. If you just have to pull data, and that could be from an equity outreach, that's $400 a month. And this is per store. When you start looking at, wow, since the dealer never really thought about managing their own data, and the data really isn't theirs because when they ask for it, they can't get it for free. There's this other piece that says, the CDP isn't that expensive if each store is spending $3,000 or $4,000 a month for the access to our customer data. And the answer is you're always going to need one.
Yes.
One connector, but do you need 5? Are you seeing this as a realistic vision that dealers, when they think of, say, a middleware cost like Orbee, that going forward, since you have open integrations and you have bidirectional integrations that you don't charge the vendors for, dealers could be saving $1,000, $2,000 a month from data integration because they can pull that data now from the Orbee database? Is that reasonable or realistic, or am I, talking about something that's not here yet?
Yeah, well, I'm very, it's a very good topic to talk about. Now, here's the thing, right? When we think about waste of, just pure economics here. If there was a reason that price existed to these things, think about it. CDK, Reynolds, et cetera. These are systems that are pretty heavy, right? Like they have a lot of things going on. It's almost like Epic in healthcare. And if you think that if they're doing work to actually produce what's needed, right? All the workflow behind the scenes that has to happen, right? Because you can't just say, select these columns and send it off to a vendor. There's piping, there's workflow.
Yes.
And why I'm very careful about this is because if that price was not just the data as a commodity, but rather the entire package, the workflow, the maintenance of it, the piping, the deduping, the backups, all of that, if that is baked in, dealers shouldn't just say, I'm going to wipe $10,000 off here and only go to one thing, because somewhere along the way, other work is going to have to be done, right? Because the CDP isn't also a magical system that somehow cleans everything and now you have one pipe to everything. That middleware that we position ourselves as, it's a lot of work. So I want to be clear that yes, there is ways to build efficiencies for all parties, where the big DMSs might say, well, if you want to do that work and you have a simple way to do it, then yeah, I don't need to get paid because you are just paying me for the hard work it takes. So I do believe that there's going to be economies of scale and efficiencies that everyone will benefit from, including those companies that were charging for it. I think the story that data is the actual, like, the stuff that you're paying for, I think that's going to change. I don't think it's the data, it's the piping, it's the workflow, it's all of that stuff that goes in. So I give some sort of empathy to the big systems that have to do all that, right? Heck, I could only imagine trying to get an X-ray out of Epic through an app, and that must take work. I don't know, maybe a truck is driving somewhere. And I use Epic as a great example. If anyone wants to see an analogy to other industries that have faced similar problems, you just look at Epic on Wikipedia, right? We all have my charts for our doctors.
Yep.
Like it's Epic behind the scenes, and they also charged hospitals for data and for the plumbing, because their software was built, Brian, before I was born. So I can only imagine what it takes. Now, that efficiency model, I think we would be doing at Orbee in collaboration with those guys.
Right.
Where it's sort of like, wait a second, there's other processing. If you take all this hard work of this annoying data organization off our tables, I could charge less, but maybe there's new things I could offer to my dealers. I could actually bring that data back in and provide a better view at the DMS level. I could do better equity mining. So I think that the legacy companies are going to evolve with technology like ours.
Right. I hope that's the case, because, when I look at the millions of dollars that are being spent to access the dealer's own data, even though I understand the infrastructure, there has to be a better way in a modern world. And I think that it hasn't changed because there was not a third-party data management tool that gained momentum. There wasn't piping like you're building to help dealers connect. When we think about open data structures, CDK, number of years, I was at the announcement at NADA for Fortellis, and it was a big whoop, whoop, whoop. And we're going to make it easy. We're going to have an app store, people in and out. It's taken a lot longer for integrations to happen in Fortellis, yet it seems that you've accelerated in just a short period of time. So many people are bidirectionally working with you to be part of your new framework. I would consider you the leader in interoperability and data exchange now in automotive retail. How did you pull that off when someone like CDK maybe has taken 8 years to get there?
Right. So I'd say that CDK had other bigger things to worry about too, right? They were a DMS and then bolted on this capability. So
Right.
I don't have the sort of the burden of that. So I want to sort of say
You don't have legacy burden.
Legacy burden or other business. Like my business is the transport, right? My business is the storage of data in a new kind of way. So I think that's, I can only imagine if I was 30 years old as a company, I'd probably have the same problems. Like, I want to have some empathy here for that, right?
No.
But I will tell you, Brian, like one of the reasons I feel that we've made progress is we kind of involve the other party. We try to give benefit and bi-directionally. We're like, hey, wait, if the dealer gets this data, what else can you do, right, with this as well? And there are levels to integration. Heck, we have a lot of work to do, Brian. Okay, like
I know.
When
but you're seeming doing it much faster than anyone thought. At NADA, I think you had at least like 25. I don't know if I'm even underestimating, but it seemed like every 30 minutes was like, and Orbee just announced this, and Orbee, and I'm like, wow, these are all cool pieces that were once all disconnected, that a dealer could now take their data and activate through this channel, this channel, this channel.
But I want to make sure,
email. Yeah.
And I want to make sure something. When you think about all the ways these things can interconnect, and you look back to even how you might use Google Sheets and QuickBooks, right? That thing evolved over time. First, you could export into QuickBooks, into Google Sheets. Then you could actually kind of like sync it. Now, I just learned about an amazing feature. You could download your entire QuickBooks tables in Excel, edit the values in Excel, and push them back into QuickBooks. Okay, this is a dream come true.
Right.
Right. So I do believe that, Brian, the way we achieve this sort of momentum is we don't try to shoot for the moon. We take baby steps. So I know you've been vocal about SFTP and batches. I say, Brian, like I want to actually step back and say, you know what? Is if this is the easiest way to get started, let's just start there.
Sure.
Right. And I almost want to think like whatever channel or method is best for that company, let's start there. And then we'll do pub sub, real time, all that stuff later. And so I think that's what's allowed us to start with baby steps. And I'll be honest, let's face it, underneath the hood, did you hear the Amazon news about the Amazon checkout, that it was actually a bunch of people in India that were monitoring people leaving the store? It's important to understand that when we announce an integration and when we're doing work, it actually starts with humans actually doing some of the manual workflow, because how else are we going to know what to automate? So I want to be clear that it starts sometimes manual, and then it kind of goes into batch file, then it goes into real time, then it goes to API. With the future, Brian, I love this, right? You book something online, and then boom, you get a text, FedEx shipments coming in 7 days. And then you see an email that says your order's processed. And then Amex is saying, I see a charge for $72.12 from Academy Sports. You're like, this is all in real time. And so I do believe that once we do the plumbing and we work on the smaller problems first, like a batch through SFTP, then later we can provide the tools to all the parties in this industry to be like, hey, did you know now we can move to near real time? And you can schedule something and an email goes out and this thing happens, that thing happens, and then your sales manager calls you. I think we could automate a lot of things, but it takes a lot of work to get there. And,
no, I see that. I mean, I'm working on a project with DriveCentric, and we first started getting their data on SFTP because that was something that could be developed. Then phase 2 is DriveCentric pushing into the data house via API. That's done. Now, our ability to push tasks back into DriveCentric via API. Now that's phase 3. It's taken months, but the ability then when a customer is back on the website doing something that we know that we could push a task, hey, do a friendly hello call to this customer in real time. That's really cool, right?
Yeah. And
But
now multiply that by 20, saying, and the website chat widget should open with a specific message. And then you maybe shouldn't pound them with ads the same. Maybe you should pause the email campaign.
Yes.
That's where that sort of orchestration starts to really get interesting.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what I see, that when I try to explain to dealers, like, hey, someone comes on your website and books a service appointment, immediately move them out of your service campaign. Bring them, maybe push them into, hey, we've gotten great reviews and we have competitive price. Someone who books a test drive, take them out of the acquisition audience, move them into another audience, meaning you're absolutely right. A trigger reminder text about their appointment, right? Send them an email with the current conversations that, hey, by the way, this is what we're getting ready. But until you have the plumbing, which is you're working on, right? You can't send the text in real time. You can't send the email in real or near time, right? You can't have the context of the conversation if what's said on Car Wars isn't being tracked, right? So this is the excitement that I see for Orbee. And you're going to be at the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference in Austin, June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. When a dealer comes up to you at the conference, obviously you have a booth, you can share with them what you're doing. What's the number one point you want to get across, or what conversation do you want to have with the dealers who are coming down the DMSC?
I want dealers to understand that they don't need to reinvent everything to transform their business. So I want dealers to come to us saying, I use this, this, and this. How can I make it work better together? We'll worry about who to replace or who shouldn't exist, or can you go renegotiate your price? And are people doing less work with this level of efficiency so that you could justify a lower subscription? That's later. The first step is, hey, do you work with these systems and can you make it better? And we say, we don't with that one, but introduce us. And we do with this one, but it's still early. But what you're looking to do, we don't have. So let's start that conversation. And the third bucket is, we have that. And not only can you do this, you could do 5 other things you didn't even think about. And Brian, like all these vendors, like all the partners that we work with, they have such great components. And so each one is amazing sometimes on its own. It's actually, how do we make them amazing together is really the hard work and the exciting part that I'm optimistic about.
I love it. I love it. And dealers, you should know, if you're a customer of Orbee, Orbee has some dealer passes for you as a sponsor. Also, Orbee has a discount code. This year, we lowered the ticket prices from $9.95 to $5.95. And for everyone who purchases a ticket and even gets a discount with the Orbee code, you're going to get 4 online courses, one on the latest lead handling strategies led by Glenn, social media advertising strategies led by Sarah. Sean is doing a full review on all the new changes in Google Ads, and my new course on customer data platforms and first-party data management. This is fresh content, all allowing you to get your mind right before coming to Austin and then really leverage, sit down with a tool, because maybe you've taken the customer data platform online course. Now you know what questions to ask a tool. You can have a more collaborative discussion with the marketing automation platform folks. It's a new way to do conferences, is the online and live experience, and Austin is a great show. So I want to encourage everyone who's watching, go to digitalmarketingstrategies.org. But before you book your ticket, you can reach out to Atul and get a discount. So Atul, what's the best way for them to get to you? What's your web address, email address? What's the best way for dealers to say, man, I want to do more with the tools that I have?
Yeah, you reach atul.patel@orbee.com. Orbee.com is a great resource. We're seeing a lot of traction on people learning a lot there. So go to Orbee.com. There's an event guide for DMSC as well.
Right.
And you could even schedule a demo and time with us and so on. So yeah, I'm excited to see everybody at the event.
Right. Well, Atul, thanks so much for your time today. And for the dealers and automotive executives watching, you should know that there are dozens of interviews just like this with automotive leaders, innovators, and people with a vision for the future of automotive retail on the podcast. So just search Brian Pash Podcast on any of your podcast players and really would enjoy having more people listen to this great content. Remember that this is part of a series leading up to DMSE June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So we'll have a number of our sponsors and key leaders doing these podcast interviews. So take a look at the most recent ones first, because that will prepare you for the great learning and education in Austin, Texas. Atul, thank you so much for sitting down with me. And I'm really excited on how fast your company is growing. Man, it has been like a rocket. Are you getting any sleep? That's the real question that everyone wants to know.
I'll sleep later.
Okay, beautiful. Well,
right.
Atul, thank you. Congratulations to the Orbee team for their massive acceleration and data integrations. And for all the dealers and automotive leaders watching, I'll catch you next time on another podcast session.
All right. Thanks, Brian.